Hi, I'm Emma. I get a lot of emails about reading comprehension, and what I want you to do is actually go back. A lot of it means that we actually have to rebuild the foundations of the wall, the literacy wall, rather than keep patching it. A lot of children will struggle, and it actually doesn't necessarily, relate to intelligence, socioeconomic area, and what have you. A lot of children can struggle. And we've known for at least the last 10 years the parts that we need to make sure that every single child has. That's phonemic awareness, phonics, vocab, fluency, comprehension. But when people come and say my child isn't comprehending the text, they tend to focus on that and not realise, well, this actually usually means that there's other parts of the jigsaw that haven't quite slotted into place. Now, there have been a lot of government reports. We've got the AU inquiry into the teaching of literacy, we've got the Rose report, we've got the National Reading Panel. It doesn't really matter what research you look at, it doesn't matter what government reports we look at, they're all going to say the same. These are the parts that we need to make sure every child has. Unfortunately, it doesn't show you how, really, and it also doesn't give the true picture about the fact that even though children need all of this, some of them are going to need them in different ways. Some children find certain parts easy, some don't, so we can't teach them all in the same way because they're not going to all learn in the same way. But we do know that if we want every single child to be reading and spelling with confidence, those are the parts they need. Another thing that hasn't really come across, I think, and certainly when I go into schools and ask what they think is the biggest predictor of reading and spelling difficulties, a lot of people seem unaware that phonemic awareness is the biggest predictor of reading failure and success. So it's something we really do have to focus on, especially in the early years, as a preventative approach. Much better to prevent difficulties rather than have to deal with them. I love that quote about it's far easier to build strong children than it is to repair broken men, and this is so true. There are such wide-reaching consequences, negative consequences, for not reading, and there's no reason why every single child shouldn't be entering Year 2 reading and spelling with confidence. However, teachers have to understand that in their prep and Year 1 class, especially their prep class, if we were to look at the brains of their children, that's sort of what we'd be looking at. And around 35% of the children are going to have poor phonemic awareness, and often it's masked if we don't understand how to teach reading and spelling to meet the needs of every child. Phonemic awareness is vital. The research is unambiguous. It's really, really clear we need to help every child develop phonemic awareness. If they've got it, then they're not going to struggle too much, but if they don't, they are definitely going to struggle. In fact, most of them won't read and spell at all unless you teach them phonemic awareness. Phonemic awareness isn't phonics. Phonics is the print. Phonemic awareness is what you hear. If you can hear in the word sit, it, if you can hear that there are 3 smaller parts and that the first one is s and the last one is t, it, if you can hear those sounds and blend them into a word, we need to, with spoken language, be able to hear the smaller parts. We need to blend them, segment them, manipulate them. And this will help us use the phonics. This will help the phonics make sense, because the phonics is looking at the smaller parts in words that link to our speech sounds and blending them into words. So when they look at the word cat, they know that it's actually written as such because of our speech. Because of our speech, when we say the word cat, we're actually saying a word that is blended from k at cat. This speech sound to speech sound pick link is vital. When we're playing speech sound detective, we're looking at words, like look at Powerade. Yes, the children might know that that's the word Powerade because you've used it before and it's on the bottle and they're familiar with it, or McDonald's or what have you. But we need to go further than this to help shape the reading and spelling brain. We need children to understand that Powerade is written as such because of how it links with our speech. When we say Powerade, we're saying Powerade, with the d being the last sound. Then when they're reading them, even though the brain is doing it so quickly, the brain is actually understanding how the speech links with those speech sound picks, the pictures of speech sounds. What we tend not to do is give children all the resources they need. We want them to be constantly exposed to all of the code. A lot of times when people are teaching phonics, for example, they might teach that an S is a representation for the S speech sound. But then children get confused when they look at the, say for example, 10 cents. I spelled 10 cents because they're hearing the s and yet they're seeing what they think of as k. So the speech sound picks approach is about making it really simple, helping children understand the speech sound to speech sound link. And we can do it with older students, it's never too late. What I want you to understand is that we're teaching children that we're really speaking and taking pictures in our minds of those speech sounds and translating them into pictures. What might it look like? So instead of starting with the print, we're starting with speech. If I say s in one of my words and take a picture, what might it look like? It might actually look like there could be 8 or 9 different pictures to represent that. So we're starting with children, even as early as prep and preschool, we're starting to help children understand the variations and start to understand the code and not limit them. Here's the SSP green level. Now there's a lot of things, even though this is the first level, it's not just about being able to look at this and say s, at, p, it, n, or even to be able to look at the word pan, pin, nap, what have you. The idea of the green level, and you can see there we've got the clouds as well, so that even though they're learning what you might think of as S, as the first representation, the first picture for the speech sound S, they're exposed to all of them through the clouds. But the idea of the green level is not so much that they're learning just to read, pan, pin, whatever, it's they're understanding the skills and concepts that are needed so we can start to scaffold their learning. So that nothing is ever a shock, that they can do it and that they can keep progressing using a scaffolding approach. But also, outside of the explicit teaching, they can be discovering the code. Now there are high frequency words that we use as helpful words, but please do remember if you use SSP, all but about 50 of the words in the English language can be decoded. Most people think when they say phonics, they say, well, most of the English language can't be decoded. It's actually wrong. It means that you're not teaching phonics in the way that, certainly in the way that we do with an SSP. Look at these readers. So the children are starting off with s, at, it, and they're using the skills and concepts to be able to actually use their readers. The readers are made up of these sounds. So it's not so much about pushing them along to read more. It's about teaching them the skills and concepts that you have if you are a reader. So look for the free resources, for example the Speech Sound Picks phonics reading booklets. So we've got the green level, and there you know that it's all going to link in with their scaffolded learning. It's going to build confidence and is actually going to build fluency and comprehension a lot quicker than if you use things like PM readers that are not based on a scaffolding approach of teaching the speech sound to speech sound pick link. Now, in a way, we're starting off with spelling more so than reading because we want it to make sense. And the children come into preschool or school, most of them already speaking, and if they're not pronouncing words correctly, then this actually really helps them as well. So we want to start off by getting familiar with the green level illustrations so that if they see a word, they know that's the word they know the word that is going to represent that might be sip, pin, pit, like a sandpit, nap, sat, ant, pan, pants. So they become familiar and confident with them and they learn that let's look at a word, let's look at this picture. What's the word? The word is sip. Now can you spell it with your duck hands or with lines? S-ip. So they're understanding what spelling is. Even before they've looked at any representations, they've even started learning any of the letters. They're also very early learning to read. Reading is about decoding for comprehension. So they're able to look at the pictures and guess what the word is. They look at the word and then use the illustration as a nice part of the learning. So they're looking at the picture of p and I and n, and they're learning to blend them, put it, n, pin. Then they look at the picture. They don't need pictures. This has got a helpful word and, but in effect it's only got the d at the end that they haven't learnt yet. Because in the green level we're just learning s, at, p, I, n. But we can use Speech Sound Detective here and work it out. Well, if that's the word and, then can you tell me which is the picture for d? And then they've discovered, oh okay, so that's a picture for d. So it's a helpful word whilst we're in the green level, but then when they get to the purple level and they learn d, it's no longer a helpful word, they can decode it. It is nan. Is a helpful word as well, because in the green level we're learning that picture you can see there is a representation for s. And it isn't it is nan, it's it is nan. So again, we're discovering. So actually we are discovering that that representation there could be a z sound as well. It is nan. Think of the things we're discovering, and we're only on the green level. It is nan. Nan spins, spins. Nan spins. And they become confident with these because other than the fact they can decode them, they then can start reading them, and this is when we're developing that fluency and that confidence, and we're able to comprehend. They can go put it in pin. They can understand what it means. Pop, pants. We can actually get them onto very simple books with meaning and talk about them, and because their brain's not having to slow down because they know those sound picks or the helpful words, their brain's not having to slow down to decode every word. It is Nin. It is Santa. Santa pats Nin, and what you'll find is the more they get familiar with Satpin, they don't have to decode them because their brain is doing it so quickly that they're able to actually read it. Santa pats Nin. And not only that, they're also able to understand what they're reading. If you covered the picture, they could read it and tell you about it. The, which is a helpful word, put in, pin, spins, spins. The pin spins. So the first time they read it, they might decode it, but then because it's their booklet, they'll keep looking at it, and their brain understands, oh okay, the pin spins. And we can close our eyes and think about, well, what are you thinking about when you think of the pin spins? What can you see in your mind? This visual imagery is vital for comprehension. And if you use books where the children can't decode and learn to decode quickly in a scaffolded approach, the children can't get to that fluency and comprehension because their brain is trying to work out the text. So then we can say to the child, oh look, here's a pin, and actually if you use these free animations or what have you, they all move, you can use it on the whiteboard. Nat and Pat sat. See what I did just then, I was looking ahead, so even before I said a word, my brain was already at Pat, because that's what we do as readers, and that's what we want the children to do, even in the green level, is to become fluent and comprehend and to understand what they're reading, and to become confident, even within just at, put it in, and some helpful words. Now when children are looking at this, look how many words it looks like there are. But the children can read it, even at the green level, because they can decode all of those words. They don't need to guess from the pictures, they don't need to try and move ahead, and the 3Q concept that so many schools have been taught for years and years and years is absolutely ineffective for most children. It just isn't, it doesn't help shape the reading and spelling brain. We don't want children to guess from the picture, and if they're not at the stage of being able to read fluently, they can't comprehend what they're reading. So you can't ask them to read on and then what do they think. It just is a nonsense. They get there because you're talking to them. They're not getting there because of what they're doing. And we want them to read for independence. We don't want you to have to read to them to memorise it and whatever. We want the children to just pick it up and think, I can read this. So the green level is all about early decoding skills, that's the reading skills, early encoding skills, which is the spelling skills, and developing visual imagery is understanding, being able to see in your mind what's happening. It's also about, outside of the green level, understanding, okay, well let's choose a word and let's see how it fits with our speech. You can do this with children if they're interested, and you know when they're ready to be doing this. Even after a term, when I went in to work with some children with prep, even though we were on the green level and moving to the purple level, children were coming in with their just juice and saying they found another picture for ooh, because they realise this is just juice and they've heard the ooh. So we can look at the clouds. It's about self-discovery alongside the explicit teaching. But even alongside the explicit teaching using at, put it in, we're still developing comprehension. We want this to be meaningful. So we can ask the children yes or no, and they read it, they look at the picture. Well, does the word match with the picture? Yes or no. So we're getting children to understand that reading is often for, it's for a purpose. Now, if you don't teach the code in a systematic and explicit way from the beginning, it's going to be really hard to develop that comprehension and fluency. And you keep going along with the curriculum, and they've got to do this and they've got to do that. And often, unfortunately, we need to stop and we need to go back again. And we need to teach the children the things that they needed to have been taught at the beginning. We need to scaffold their decoding skills, so giving them a group of sound picks. We might call them phonemes or graphemes. It might be sapin, s, at, p, I, n. You might have a instead of a n. I tend to follow letters and sounds in the UK because, as you can hear from my accent, I'm from the UK. It doesn't really matter other than the first group has to be a group that allows you to make a lot of words, so that we can teach children what reading and spelling is all about just using this small group. So we're keeping it so that the children can gain confidence because it's not too much. We start off with that group, the children are learning those skills, and then some children can move ahead and have another 3 or 4, some children can have a whole nother group. But if you look at the SSP levels, you'll see how we introduce them. And because we're introducing it in this way, you can use the readers and what have you that go alongside it, and all the resources that go along with letters and sounds in the UK. Lots of great resources now, and what I'm trying to do with SSP is get it to be as free as possible for everybody. So regardless of how old your child is or how far they are into the sort of their reading and spelling journey, can you, when you're looking at words, or just choose random words like this and work out when you say the word how it could link with the speech sounds? So with float, f or oat. Now this is the rule that's really important for reading and spelling. So if we might say ant, and when you actually listen for the word ant, we might say ant. And you might think there's 2 sounds there, but actually for spelling we need to think, well, a and n together are just blended. They're not making a completely new sound, like if we put s and h together, they would become sh. So for spelling, ant, we need to count them as ant 3 lines. So when they're first learning to read, we need to scaffold it. So we're teaching them the phonemes in a specific order, so we've got that explicit teaching. Their readers go alongside that, and they also of course have books that they choose. That's when you're reading to them, reading with them, but they're not actually reading those because they can't read those. So that's when they are just enjoying the story and spending time with you. But at the same time, what I want you to do is find some words in books. It doesn't have to be at their level, it can be any word, like happy. And then all you're going to do is say the word, you tell them what the word is, say the word, listen for the speech sounds, and work out how that word links with the speech sounds. So happy, what can we hear? Happy. Even if we hear ha-p, the h and the a are blended. So when we're spelling, or listen for counting the number of speech sounds that we need to do for spelling, we count them as h, a, p, e. H-ap-e, so there are 4 of them. And then we look at, well, what's the sound pick for the p sound? It's 2 p's because it's not ha-p-p-e. So we can look at the cloud and realise that's another representation for the p sound. This is really going to help them make sense of it for reading and for spelling. Now, if we don't scaffold alongside an order of the phonemes, and we give them things like PM readers, which are just a mishmash, you could have right at the beginning a child could come home with words that are made up of sound picks, of phonemes that they've never seen before, let alone be able to blend them together. Sally's new shoes. They've got to know that 2 L's together make an ul sound, and that a Y is an E sound, sell E's. New, they need to know the EW digraph. It's like giving them advanced algebra, and it's just I think it's just really cruel. So PM readers are just a mishmash. There's not scaffolding. It's when they talk about levels, it's not leveled, because that's not how the brain learns to read and spell. It goes completely against what we know about research. It goes against what we're being told in the inquiry into the teaching of literacy, all the government reports and what have you. So we need to scaffold, but if you do have a PM reader, I would suggest, if the school's still using them, I would suggest read it to them and then do what I've just done, which is finding the links between the speech sounds and the sound picks. That will help their brain start to make sense of why the word is created as it is, even though what you're doing really is trying to explain. It would be like trying to explain an algebraic equation to a child who's in prep, because that's what you've been sent home with them. You're trying to explain something that really is far too complicated. So let's scaffold, but thinking about comprehension again, if the child is being asked to read PM readers, the brain is working far too hard at trying to make sense of the print. Yes, that's why people say guess from the picture, all the rest of it. That's just trying to help a child guess. That's not helping the child to read. So because they're struggling, their brain is really struggling to make sense of it all. They can't comprehend. They seem to comprehend when you're talking to them because you're asking them, and that's a different part of the brain. You read something to a child and ask them questions. That's a different part of the brain than when the child reads and has to comprehend what they're reading. It's a different part of the brain. It's a different process. So thinking about comprehension, I want you to go back and make sure the child can decode the words fluently and confidently so that they can understand, and you build up. If you're doing this with an older student, you can go back to the green level and just teach them what they've missed, and you can rapidly move through the levels so that they get to be a confident reader. I want you to value the print and value the fact that the children need to be able to read the print, even if there's no pictures there. So kind of think, would this child be able to read this without any illustrations there? And if not, then we're not giving them the skills, because that's what reading is about. It's about making sense of the text, not looking at pictures and guessing. It's about making sense of the print. So let's focus on that. Now I'm just going to show you that this is what you do. So what I'm going to do in a second is I'm going to show you some text, and I want you straight away to read it aloud. I don't want you to scan it and whatever. I just want you to read it aloud and see how you feel, what you're doing, etc. Now you won't get the full impact if you didn't actually read it aloud. You're reading it to yourself. I want you to read it aloud, because then you'll see that that's what you're doing. You are sounding out the words. So if anyone says to you, oh, we don't sound out words, it takes too long, whatever, I want you to realise that that is exactly what you do as a reader. If you come to a word that you're not familiar with, you sound it out. You start from the left and you look for the parts that you know. So you might, even if you didn't know what the second word was, you might go Gallimau fry, and you would use your knowledge of the code to work out what that word could be. You're trying to make sense of the word by using your knowledge of how the speech sounds linked to the print. If somebody was to tell you that word and actually give you the correct pronunciation, then you would know exactly how it fits. And if you heard the word and you'd heard it before, all of a sudden you think, oh yes, I know that word. So this is how this speech links to this sound picks. All these things are going on in the brain. If you don't understand what this means, and then you're going to do what people are telling children to do, as in leave the word and carry on and you'll understand it and whatever. Well, supposing I told you, okay, well don't read that second word, keep reading. You can't understand the rest of it, or you probably can't understand all of it. So again, your brain can never have a chance to catch up to understand, well, because you know what it means, because you're not reading in context. But you have the skills as a reader to be able to at least decode this, even if your vocab knowledge, your understanding of words and what they mean and whatever isn't huge, so that you don't understand what it means, but you can still decode. So you've got the skills to decode. What you could then do is you would find out, well, what do these words mean? And you would go to a dictionary or whatever, and you'd start to put it all together so you can get the comprehension. But all of this is what we have to give children. We have to give children the ability to at least decode the word and at least try and make sense of it, to say it. Often then they'll say it and say, you know, supposing it was carrot, they might go, carrot, because they'll keep trying it in different ways. Oh, carrot. Okay, well, I know the word carrot. I don't know the word carrot, so I think it's carrot. And they can change it because they know what a carrot is. That's the vocab knowledge. and then they can carry on. But we have to give them all of these skills. Children have to be able to sound out words. So what we want to do is scaffold their learning, so they're learning to decode, they're building it up, and at the same time we're giving them vocab knowledge, we're discussing different words, we're talking, all that verbal intelligence that's so important, so that they understand different words that they might not necessarily use at home. And that's why when you're reading books to them, that's when you talk about the words that they're hearing, because you're reading it to them and we're bringing it all together. So if your child is bringing home a reader is supposed to be a book that they can read themselves independently. If they're bringing home a reader and they're struggling to read it, as in they can't decode 85% of it fluently and easily, then that book is too hard for them. Don't look at the number of words that are on the page. There might only be 3 words on the page. That doesn't make it an easy book. What matters is, do they know the sound picks on that page? So if they're reading I can jump, and they can decode, they know I as a helpful word, and they can decode at and can. Can they decode jump, or is there a picture of someone that's jumping there? If you've got a book that's going I can fly, I can whatever, what you're teaching them there is to guess. We don't want to do that. We want them to be able to read the page without any illustrations and without guessing, and then be able to look at the illustrations to make it even more exciting. And often I actually get them to close their eyes before they look at the illustration, so that they can compare their visual imagery with what's actually on the book. If you're not doing it in this way, children will really struggle, not only to read fluently, they won't enjoy it because the brain is having to work far too hard, and they're not getting to that stage of the enjoyment of understanding what they're reading. So if your child is having difficulties with comprehension, I want you to turn it on its head and go right back to the beginning. Send me an email if you're not sure, but often when children are not understanding, it's because the brain is not at a stage of being able to decode those words quickly enough so that they're actually recognizing the words and reading them fluently, so that their brain can actually flow. The brain's having to stop, start, stop, start. The text is too hard, so no way can they comprehend it. So at that stage, if you want them to understand the text and you want them to be able to answer questions or do something with it, then read it to them. It's a different part of the brain that's then processing the information, but read it to them. But don't expect them to read it and understand it and then answer questions about it if the text is not at their level. And if it's not at their level, then we need to look at the teaching, not the child. More often than not, there is no problem with the child. The child has not been taught in the way that works for them. The problem is that there's so much misinformation. There's so many things that are actually going on still in Australia that goes completely against research and evidence-based practice. We need to use a combination of phonics, phonemic awareness to develop that fluency and comprehension. When we're talking about whole language, which is an approach that has been proven over and over again not to be effective for the greatest number of children, that's when we're looking at things like PM readers, because that's what they're based on. They're based on something that was called the whole language approach. That is not going to meet the needs of all the children. If you're being sent home PM readers, then this is an indicator that the teachers at your school are being given the wrong information and they need training. If you have a child who is at the end of prep and you're saying, oh, they're only at level 7, well, that means that PMs are not for your child. If you bin the PMs in prep and use the SSP, then at the end of prep you benchmark them, you'll find that they're level 20 and above, and that's because the children by then are actually reading. But we don't use PMs to teach reading because it's just madness. It goes against everything we know about the brain and the reading brain, the spelling brain, and goes against everything that we know from research, from evidence-based practice. But if you do for some reason want to know a level, then do it at the end. But the level means nothing to me. It means nothing to me whatsoever with regards to their reading level. And why do you want a reading level? I mean, what is a level? What we want to know is the children understanding what they're doing. Are they confident? Are they enjoying it? Are they understanding it? Are they keeping up with the work? Are we pushing that child according to that child's potential and what have you? You can look at a reading age, but again, it's just an average of a reading age. But you can use far more effective testing like BERT and what have you to do this. Now, unless teachers are given information and then ignore it, I don't blame teachers at all. I think teachers are not getting the training that they need. They're not getting the support and the resources. And this is why I created SSP in the first place. Schools fund PD training. You don't have to have school PD training, though, to use SSP. All the resources are free. I'm trying to create it so that you've got everything you could possibly need to teach any child to read and spell based on evidence, based on research. So please, if you're a teacher watching this, just book training. You don't have to take on everything at once, but at least it'll give you some ideas. And I actually do. So everything I talk about, I do. I'll go in with any child and teach any child to read and spell based on these principles. You don't need money, you just need information. Information is power.